This is Whiskey Whereabouts. I'm Tim, and this is peated Bunnahabhain. This is the core range non-age statement Toiteach Aga. Is this as good as some of the other non-age statement peated whiskeys we know from Islay? Is it as good as the other core range offerings, like the 12-year? Let's get into it. My whiskey journey has taken me to Scotland and back. I've explored whiskey education, tastings, and distilleries from Islay to Speyside. And now my journey continues here, with you, on Whiskey Whereabouts. So this pour is breathing in my Bunnahabhain Toiteach that I brought back from my tasting at the distillery, warehouse number 9. And when I was there, it was an all sherry matured whiskey tasting, which is fairly appropriate. We've got a pretty big sherry influence here on this whiskey. It's 75% sherry, 25% bourbon. I believe that it's said to be Oloroso sherry, although not confirmed. And the Toiteach Aga is a Gaelic for smoky 2. This is the sequel. There's an original smoky version of the Bunnahabhain, and this is its successor, in which they are attempting to turn up the richness with a higher percentage of the sherry casks and the smokiness with a little bit more ppm. It's about 40 ppm on the barley in this whiskey. So we've got the standard Bunnahabhain 46.3% ABV, and it is no artificial color, no chill filtration, of course, but we don't have an age statement. We don't know how old this whiskey is. I've seen it rumored sort of around online 6 to 8 years, closer to 10 than the 5. There seems to be, at least in this speculation, a consensus that it's older than 5 years, say. But the big sort of attraction here, the notable quality of this whiskey is that it is peated, and if you are not familiar, Bunnahabhain is an Islay distillery. By default, it's not peated. So here we have one of the peated offerings directly from the distillery, so we get to find out how that sort of Bunnahabhain approach blends with the peat. So going in on the nose neat on this whiskey, the smoke is there, it's pretty dry, it's ashy, it's definitely hanging around and over everything, but it's not overpowering, it's integrated. Underneath that, I'm getting some of those elements that I might expect from sherry Bunnahabhain: sherry, sweetness, and salty. Salt air, sea salt, however you want to describe that. And the sherry sweetness has evolved a little bit. It has a orange, certainly. It's not that sticky brown sugar, sort of cinnamon bake spice. This has been open for over a week. When I had the neck pour, very rich, very tight. That was how the sherry was manifesting. Now it's more toffee. And there's a lot of vanilla peeking out now. Maybe from the, bourbon casks. But the sweetness has sort of opened up. It's a little bit lighter. It's a little bit fresher on the nose. Checking out the palate neat here. Smoky, rich. The smoke is here. A lot of ash on the tongue. The smoke is sort of hanging above it. It's not as strong as that sort of ashy sensation as it lingers kind of above the palate on the kind of roof of your mouth. You have the rich sweetness. It is chocolate now. Caramel. There is saltiness. Salty caramel. Sweet. Rich. And there is a fruit, but it's gone sherry a little bit. It's a little bit more raisiny. It's a little bit more dried fruit now than the sort of apple on the nose. I had more of that sort of apple baking spice sweetness on the neck pour. Now it's separating out a little bit. I'm getting that sort of dried fruit and then that rich, deep sweetness. It's a really nice combination with the smoke. Let's go back, check out the finish neat here. Fully medium finish with a nice progression. Comes in a little oak, a little bitter, and it progresses through some stages on that finish. As it sort of recedes, you've got coffee grounds. Then it goes sweeter with the dark chocolate, which is a nice sort of evolution and complement here on the palate. There's also something for the first time that's almost medicinal, sort of lingering behind at the very end of that finish, along with obviously a nice big plume when the finish goes of the smoke. Now it's full wood fire smoke, and it is still present. Most of the finish is gone, but that smokiness remains. It's tugging kind of at the very back of your sort of senses, just still present. Having had this before and experimented with it a little bit, I will just tell you that the water is pointless. It really doesn't open up anything new. This whiskey is right where it wants to be at the 46.3%. I'm gonna let that just integrate just for a second, just to tell you what I mean. Yeah, it's just diluted the sweetness. There's a little bit more of the fruit. It's very orange. Here it feels less rich and much sharper on the nose, so it's certainly not an improvement. And when you go to the palate and the finish, it's still a nice mouthfeel. It has a very solid mouthfeel at this ABV, and chocolate's really taking over. The smoke is still there. Just a lot of stuff, just had the volume turned down. So this is one that really doesn't need to be opened up with water. So where do I come out on this whiskey? I reviewed not too long ago the Meikle Tour, the Space Side peated 5-year from Glenallachie, and I talked on that video. If you haven't seen it, I'll put the link up here so you can check it out. That it really wasn't much of a comparison to the Wee Beastie, even though they're both peated 5 years, because they're doing so many different things. This is closer to what's going on with the Meikle Tour, even though this is not a sherried whiskey. It has a lot of the sort of cinnamon ginger spice. So some of that baked spice here. They're both pretty chocolatey also. So I think this is a little bit closer here. This one is not age statement, but it's assumed to be a little bit older. And obviously it's Islay and Speyside. I think the more appropriate comparison to this whiskey with the sherry influence and the peat and the Islay and the non-age statement is probably the Sanag, the Kilchoman. This is not as good as that. The Sanag is fantastic. And in terms of trying to compare it to sort of the high ABV non-age statement Ardbegs, that's a totally different class of whiskey. There's no point in making that comparison. In terms of Bunnahabhains, this is better than I did this travel retail, the Uncladaigh, on the channel not too long ago. This is better than this. I mean, it's not age statement travel retail, but this is not peated. It's sherried though, and it's not as good as the 12-year. The 12-year is something special, obviously without the peat. So that kind of leaves us where I think it should be 4 glasses. I think it's a very solid whiskey. Rich, sweet, smoke. The finish leaves you looking to sort of go for another sip. In terms of value, I see this bottle for about $80, and that's about $15 more than the 12-year, which is a better whiskey. In terms of the Sanag, which is a pretty comparable whiskey, it's almost the same price, and I would say the Sanag is probably a half glass better whiskey. So I am going to reduce this one 3.75 glasses. And invite you, if you have not already, to make sure you subscribe. You can press this big button that's coming up right over here. We got a lot of exciting stuff coming on the channel, including a very special Lagavulin showdown that I have coming up very, very soon. So if you haven't subscribed, make sure you do, and I'll see you on the next one.